Okay, it looks like we are ready. Hold on one second. Let me hit this button for our any participants that may be joining us. Okay. All right, ladies, let's get started again.
Hello.
Okay, so hello everyone. Again, we're so happy that you decided to join us for our second session with Francesca Ross Jones, author of Making Common Sense of Credit. If you guys have joined us last week, we would have
Oh,
learned about all the things a great credit score entails. She did a wonderful job
mm,
explaining from her book. And today, Francesca will join us again, and she's going to specifically talk about what do you do if you have credit that needs to be repaired, or if you're someone
mm,
who doesn't have a credit history at all and simply needs a strategy for building your credit. She's going to talk about that. As you can see, Francesca is super dedicated. She is actually out of town today and has decided to broadcast live from her, y'all. So I just find that extremely commendable, and we do appreciate commitment to us in sharing her knowledge. Also, again, with me is Felicia Grant. Felicia is the National Association of Black Accountants Atlanta's chapter
mhm.
financial literacy director. And as you know, I am the financial literacy director for the southern region of the National Association of Black Accountants, which we call NABA. So, what I'm going to do is allow Francesca to share her presentation and get us started. And then Felicia and myself will sign off, and we'll be back for any questions.
Good evening, everybody. I hope and pray that you're having a wonderful Tuesday. Welcome back, everyone that was able to join us on last week. We had a wonderful time talking about credit. And we really focused on what it takes to get to a great credit score, right? I am, as Bernice just stated, Francesca Ross Jones, author of Making Common Sense of Credit. I am the founder of Common Sense Solutions. I like to think of us as a financial services boutique. We do help consumers as well as businesses with all aspects of financial and business growth. Don't want to talk too much about myself. Most of you guys got to get in on that Meet the Speaker presentation that was a few weeks ago, as well as you maybe were on last week. So don't want to spend too much time talking about me. I want to get into this presentation so we can talk to you guys about what you have going on or what questions you have this evening. So I want to go back, and today we want to talk about building and reestablishing your credit, right? So some of the things that we really want to focus on are the three main strategies of credit repair or credit restoration, as some would like to call it. So the tips for removing the most common types of negative markings on the credit report. So those negative trade lines that we see pop up, whether it be it's from a account that does belong to us or an account that possibly doesn't belong to us and it's popped up on our credit report, right? General steps to repairing damaged credit, common types of negative marks, the order of debt repayment to maximize the credit score, and identity theft. And then we want to answer your questions. So if you have debt that needs to be paid down, we're going to talk about the order in which we want to repay that debt, because while repaying, we want to make sure that we're maximizing the score. So if we're going to do so, there's a kind of a way or a method that in my professional opinion and knowledge, would be the best strategy for you, depending on your situation. And we definitely want to, we talked about identity theft last week, but we want to go in and focus a little bit more on that as well and how to handle that type of situation. So let's start by revisiting the 5 main factors to making what most of us would feel or call a great credit score. Now, as we go over these, I want you all to plan to commit this to memory. Why? Because it will aid you and assist you when you're making decisions and you're moving with your credit in day-to-day life and you're making decisions. You're going to say to yourself, is this going to be helpful to my credit score and my credit forecast, or is this maybe going to be harmful to my credit forecast, right? And then once we do that, I'm going to pretty much keep this up as we go through the next couple of few slides that I have. I don't have a lot of slides for today's presentation because it's not about giving you as much information as it is about helping you at this point to build and definitely to reestablish and repair that damaged or that challenged credit. So first, we want to talk about payment history, which remember is 35% of the credit score. We want to pay our bills on time, and we want to remember that there's a 2-year track that measures how we're paying. That's so important in calculating into the credit score. Very important. 35%. That is the largest portion of this pie chart here. Okay. So if you're not paying your bills on time currently, we want to be focused on beginning that pattern. And if you are paying your bills on time, we want to continue to make sure we're paying timely and building positive towards that 24-month mark, because that is so detrimental when the credit reporting agencies are reporting to your credit and any potential lender or creditor is looking at your credit worthiness when you're applying for credit. 30%, our debt to credit limit ratio. We want to always try to keep that as low as possible. But remember, according to the bureaus, 30% is their key point that they're looking at that tells them or says to them, you're using that credit responsibly. And this is more so looking at your credit cards, more so than any other kind of debt you have. It's more so looking at your credit card. So making sure that you are keeping that at 30% or below that credit limit that's established for you. So I say 5 to 7%, no more than 11%. But 30% is what the credit bureaus are looking at. So if you can get to 30%, you can piggyback and move that lower as you go. The average age of your credit file, that's 15%. So we want to have accounts open as long as possible. Don't go and close out credit cards because you don't use them anymore. Keep them open. We talked about that last week, because you may have had that credit card for 6, 7, 8 years. That may be your oldest trade line. Your latest trade line may be 2 or 3 years old. So we want to make sure that we are keeping that trade line open, because it's going to positively impact us. If we close it, it may negatively impact us because you're going to lose 15%. If you only have that one card, you'll lose that. And if you look, we talked about this a little bit last week, 35% plus 15%, that's 50% of the credit score. So guys, it's important to think about and realize that time is of the essence. Time plays a very critical and important role in what you're doing, how you're building, what that's going to look like for you long term. So time, it takes time. It didn't happen overnight. It's going to take time for us to rebuild and get back to that place or for us to build because we're not established yet. But I promise you, it's definitely going to work out. The mix of credit. We want to have a diverse account mix. We talked about what that looks like. So we stated if you have a mortgage, the mortgage. If you have a vehicle loan, the vehicle loan. And no more than 3 credit cards. It's just what that good credit profile looks like. You may have more than 3 credit cards, but we're just kind of looking at, we talked about that last week. What does the typical credit profile that is nice, looks really good, what that looks like? The diverse account mix. We are referring to, if you guys remember, installment versus revolving. Installment is a account that we're planning to pay off eventually, right? And however many months that may be. If it's a vehicle, it may be 48 months, it may be 60 months, it may be 36 months. So the ultimate goal is to pay that off. It's a mortgage. We may have a 15-year mortgage, a 20 or 25 or a 30-year mortgage, right? If we have an installment loan that we've gone and taken out at our local bank, maybe perhaps we want to purchase something that we don't want to go into our savings for at this time, or we want to purchase something that maybe we can afford, but we don't have the liquid cash right now to do so. So that's what we talk about, that mix of credit. That is 10%, okay? Other factors we see here on the pie chart would be inquiries and things of that nature. Inquiries, you have your soft inquiries, you have your hard inquiries. We want to keep those hard inquiries to a minimum. Hard inquiries are tangible things or loans that we go out and get. So it might be a credit card, it may be the mortgage, it may be we applied for a vehicle. Soft inquiries are those pre-approvals we receive in the mail. There, we're applying for a job or a new position at work, and that may be part of that criteria as a candidate. They may pull the credit. That would be a soft hit. When you pull your credit and you look, I know Credit Karma is very popular for people right now. And then we also have various credit monitoring from companies that people use widely. We have some of those, maybe FICO, Identity IQ, Privacy Guard. There's a number of them out there, and you have the ability to pull your own credit score. We talked a lot about Vantage versus FICO, and those would be considered soft inquiries as well. So for anyone who is on with us today and you are new to credit, or you may not necessarily be new, but you just haven't had taken the time to establish any credit, to start any credit. Some tips for someone with no credit. I have a couple here that I wanted to go over. So a secured credit rebuilder or initial credit building credit card. There are lots out there. One that I like is called Open Sky. Another one that I like, I've listed the link here, and we can always get this back out to you. If you want it, please feel free to reach out to myself or to NABA, and we can get these links back out to you. But another one is a secured card, called the Credit Builder card. It's from a company called First Progress. When I found out about that card, I liked it a lot because it reports to the bureaus up to 6 times in a month. So, for instance, if you're going to purchase gas, or maybe you're going to Walmart to pick up odds and ends, or the grocery store, instead of using the cash or your debit card, I would suggest you actually use the secured card and go back home and set up to send a payment back to the card. You can do that up to 6 times in a month, and it reports every time. I have clients who we have seen score increases in a month's time of 40, 50, 60 points just from using this secured card. That particular card, I know it's $200 to start the card. You can find some for $200. Most secured cards through your bank are going to be at least $500. So that's a great one. Self-lender, I love it because it's a great credit building account. It acts as a savings account while at the same time acting as a installment loan for you. So you're building positive credit, and at the same time, you are saving. So it's basically a CD. They put all the money in the CD for you. You have a couple of plans that you could choose from. Once you pay that money back in, it's just paying back what they've already put out there for you in advance in the CD. So they funded the CD for you. So let's just say, for instance, you get in a 12-month program. At the end of those 12 months, you will actually receive back whatever program you're in. Let's say, for instance, it was the $48 a month for 12 months. You'll get back some 500 and something odd dollars is what you'll get back. So you'll be saving money. How good is that? And you'll be establishing installment payment history because it would be acting as an installment loan. Another great way to build credit is through your utilities. Most of the time when you get an apartment or a home, when you are ready to get your power, your gas, your water, they do run your credit to see if you qualify for no deposit or if you have to make a deposit. So if that's the case, why is it that it's not reporting to your credit? Well, you as a consumer do have that right. The utility companies are not going to tell you that, but you can reach out to them and ask them, hey, I pay my bill on time and I want to have it reported to the credit bureaus. But guys, make sure that you're paying your bill on time before you do that. Okay, general steps to repair and damage credit. So when we talk about removing or changing items that are lowering our score, we want to think about how do we want to go about that, right? Removing or changing items that are lowering our score. So what does that look like? We're going to get into that a little bit more in the next couple of slides. We want to talk about paying down revolving debt. We also want to talk about adding items that will increase our credit score. All of these are very important steps. Well, the three main steps when we talk about how we're going to repair challenged or damaged credit. Removing or changing items that are lowering our score, that's going to be major, guys. So when we look at that, we're looking at those negative items, right? So whether they could be collections, charge-offs, things of that nature, they are negative catalysts to increasing the score or holding the score down. So we have to look at ways to repair that, right? So everybody knows the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We talked about it. We touched on it. That particular law, piece of legislation, protects you as a consumer, right? So part of that says if there are items in your credit report that are negative or obsolete, they have to be removed. So how do we even go about doing that? Credit repair. Credit repair. That's major. When we talk about credit repair, it's important to remember that it's personal. So everybody's situation is going to be different. No two people have the same situation, right? So we talked about all the factors here that affect the credit score in this pie chart. Effective credit repair that is going to be legal and stay or sustain itself will involve disputing negative items that are reporting on your credit profile that are actually inaccurate or obsolete, right? The reporting of them. And they're affecting your score. However, you have to keep in mind if it's something that's accurate. So let's say, for instance, maybe you had a doctor bill from way back when and you just forgot to pay it, but it's actually yours. I tell people, that could be something that's accurate. So there's also ways to work on, let's fix this issue without saying, I know a lot of times people are skeptical of credit restoration because we do have companies out here who say oh, I had identity theft. None of these negative items are mine. That's not right, guys. So the goal is to fix the issue. So whether that may be disputing because it's inaccurate, paying the debt off, settling the debt, it just depends. And we want to make sure, however we're moving and what we are doing, that we're doing it in such a way that it makes sense for us and not harm us in the long run. If you determine, I suggest looking at your credit report once every 6 months, if not more often than that. I look at mine all the time, but again, that's because it's a part of my everyday. So I look at it infrequently. I don't look at it every day, but I do have those measures in place so that it alerts me if I do have something new to come onto the credit, possibly some type of identity theft or anything like that going on. But just in a day to day, I don't look at it every day. The likelihood of you getting something removed that you see reporting on the credit report that's negative from a credit reporting agency, a creditor, a collection agency, any of the above, it depends on how you're handling the dispute. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. You're going to have to contact the credit bureau to open an investigation. The credit bureau, their job is to, on your behalf, because you've contacted them and it's reporting through them, it's their job to contact that collection agency, that creditor, whoever that may be, and say to them, hey, this consumer has this particular dispute and we need you to investigate it and get back to us. The creditor normally has 30 days to respond. In lieu of COVID-19, that was changed to 60 days. And a couple of weeks ago, maybe sometime last month, some new legislation came out from complaints that they were receiving because you have consumers like yourself or myself who may have issues on their credit report, or they may have issues that have popped up on their credit report, and they're diligently doing the work to get those items removed, and they're not receiving responses. The turnaround time is being slow, and we have been hearing from the bureaus that that had to do with COVID, them being out of the office, having to touch mail, and all kinds of things. Well, when there's an influx of complaints, then something has to be done. So the latest in the credit restoration world has those dates have been changed to 70 days, 75 days that they have to get back to you for that dispute. And then after then, it's an issue now. But moving back to the normal 30 days, if they do not respond within 30 days, the law states that the item must be deleted or changed in your credit profile according to whatever it is that you're saying is wrong. Whether that be you see an account on there and it isn't yours, you see something wrong with the way the account is reporting, maybe the balance, maybe the date of last activity, whatever that is, whatever your claim was, if they don't respond, it's supposed to be removed. Now, keep in mind that if they remove it in 30 days because they didn't hear back from the creditor, we have seen where there are times where the creditor comes back and they reinsert it for that reason. They're not, no creditor is supposed to reinsert anything back onto your credit report without giving you prior knowledge that they're doing so. But because they didn't follow the law and they waited, then it's a possibility that it reappeared back on the credit report, which is awful. That's awful when that happens, because I've seen situations where it's removed, we see that score go back up, and then we have the issue with it being reinserted and it negatively impacting the score again. And that's the pits when you are in the middle of doing something life altering and major. It may be purchasing a new car, or more importantly, purchasing a home. And so we it's a bad feeling to see that happen, but it does happen sometimes. Realize, guys, that the credit reporting agency, creditors, they're going to do their bare minimum to help you, to investigate this claim that you're making. And so you may have to communicate with them a little bit more frequently, be a little bit more forceful in your communication to get them to comply with the Fair Credit Reporting Act regulations. So always remember, you as a consumer are protected by the Fair Credit Reporting Act and a number of other laws that protect you as a consumer. I talk a lot more about that in the book. I don't want to try to overload you guys with a whole lot of information that it's great information and it's important information, but I kind of want to help you guys to know how you want to navigate things. When you're repairing your credit, I talked about a little bit earlier when we first got on the presentation. What does that look like for me? The steps. What items do we want to tackle first? We want to look at first, for me, would be late payments. So if you have something that's reporting late, I immediately, and you have some extra money, right? So that we can try to start working on clearing up the challenges and also at the same time maximizing the score. Late payments would be first for me. So if you have a 30-day late, a 60-day, a 90-day, if you have the money there, that's the first one we want to tackle. Why? That late payment we saw in this pie chart, 35% is your payment history. So that ding can be very detrimental negatively, right? So if we have the extra money, we want to try to bring that current. We definitely want to try to bring that current, have that showing coming up in these next 30 days. Will it help? Definitely. If it is already at a place where it's charged off or worse, it's not going to be as helpful, because once it reaches that charge off status, that 120 plus days, 150 plus days, things of that nature, it's already in a whole nother level of delinquency that even if you pay it off, it may improve the score a couple of points, but it's not going to be the same as you curing that late payment. Me personally, if I was 30 days late, I would reach out to the creditor and actually petition them for a good faith removal of the 30-day late. You may have had something happen in your life that was detrimental, and because you're bringing this current, sometimes you will get some really nice agent on the phone who's willing to help you, or a supervisor. Don't give up if you don't the first time. Hang up, call back, get somebody else. But if you can, I would definitely bring that current, that past due, that late payment, and I would petition for a good faith removal of that 30-day late. Next, student loans. Student loans can be so heavy, guys, but two things I want you to remember. You may be able to rehab those student loans. Also, student loans can stay on your credit. So it may be 25 years before you see something positive happen behind you letting them get out of whack. There's nothing in the Fair Credit Reporting Act that says they have to remove student loans from your credit report in 7 years or 10 years, like you have the statute of limitations for other types of delinquencies and accounts. So with student loans, your options would be trying to go ahead and rehab those loans, consolidate those loans. There are a lot of methods, and I talk about them in detail in the book, but we want to try to keep from having those student loans go into a negative situation. Also, remember, if you're entitled to any type of federal refund, perhaps for a tax refund, you may have the problem of not being able to get that money because it'll be offset. It is a federal debt. And so when you have a federal debt, it's possible for them to offset and take your money. So that would be my second one to definitely work on. My third set would be repossessions and foreclosures. Repos, they can be detrimental. One thing I want you guys to remember about repos is if a car is repossessed and it's still reporting on your credit with a balance, most likely when they came and they repoed the car and they took it to auction to sell it, they sold it, but there was a deficiency balance left. So that deficiency balance is showing on your credit. And what they're saying is you still owe them this money. So that can be an issue, especially when you're going to try to purchase another vehicle. So you definitely want to work on that if it comes to that. The same thing with foreclosures. Those would be the ones that if I could cure them and I had a little extra money, I would work to try to resolve that. But keep in mind, guys, if you have extra money, you don't want to put yourself in a worse situation by putting too much money in the wrong places where it's not going to help you in the long run. Bankruptcy. Bankruptcy can be another one that is a lot to deal with. So, of course, we know there with bankruptcy, depending on the type of bankruptcy, it's either 7 years or 10 years that it can stay on the credit report. So, with those, I say looking at how it's reporting, if there's any inaccuracies there, we definitely want to look at that to make sure, because it can be very detrimental to the credit report, to the credit score. Inquiries, they're not as detrimental to the score as most people think. Usually they may hit you for maybe 5 points or so, but depending on where you are in your credit forecast, I have seen it be effective of up to 50 points or more, depending on how many inquiries you're getting in a given time frame. I say it's best if you don't need to apply for it, don't apply for it. Charge-offs and collections. Whew. Charge-offs and collections, you guys, are a lot of work to get removed sometimes, because depending on what's going on with them, if most of the time when it's a charge-off or collection is already at a third party, you will need to know your rights when you're dealing with these collectors, the statute of limitations in your state for suing for this particular debt, re-aging that debt sometimes if you pay something off, and depending on how long it's been, what's going on with it. Although it is illegal, we still see it happen all the time to re-age debt when you have an account, the date of first delinquency. Most of the time, it depending on what type of collection or charge off it is, that is going to start that clock ticking for those 7 years. But we do see instances where we'll have a debt that's sold to a collection agency, then maybe sold to another collection agency, or you pay it off and they will re-age this debt, which if you've ever paid off something that was really old and you see your credit score plummet and you say, why did my score go down? I paid that off. I made that right. That's why. You re-aged the debt and it was outside that 24-month mark window. So it wasn't as damaging and detrimental as if it were within that window. And again, that's another reason why you will see a lot of people choose to seek credit consultations and assistance when they're on this journey, because they run into those situations with paying off old charge-offs, old collections. Now, in the book, I dedicate a lot of time and a whole section that explains your rights, the importance of those statute of limitations, because it's very important depending where you are, where you live. And then I talk about guidelines and tips to help you handle those. So we kind of talked about this a little bit paying down revolving debt, the priority list, so the past due balances, that's going to be the first thing that we hit, right? Collection companies that agree to delete, that pay for deletion. So what that pretty much is saying is, I say if it's $100 or less and you can pay it, you're saying to them, hey, I'm going to pay this off. I'm not saying that it's my debt, but in exchange for me paying it off, because it's causing me problems as I'm applying for new credit and I'm trying to move around and navigate, it's causing me issues. I would like, if I pay this, you will delete it from my credit profile as if it was never there. I would do that on things that are $100 or less if we have that extra money to juggle. Because remember, we're trying to get the biggest bang for our buck while at the same time maximizing or increasing the credit score. Credit cards would be my third one on the list. So I would start with, maybe you guys have heard with the snowball effect, but start with getting those down to that 30%, right? How much do you owe on that credit card? So we want to work on getting them down to that 30%. Lastly, we want to settle collections and charge-offs that won't delete with payment. That's the last one we want to do. And we want to be careful about what we're doing and how we're moving in doing so, because we want to make sure that we're causing less harm and better good in our movement. Now, identity theft. We talked about identity theft last week. If you see that you may be a victim of identity theft, the first thing we want to do is do a credit report fraud alert. So we want to alert the credit reporting agencies that we have this fraud, this potential fraud, so that that alert is already put out there to potentially help alleviate or deter that thief from doing more harm and danger to you and your credit score and your credit report. Next, we want to file an identity theft police report, because that's going to be very important. We want to have our identity theft affidavit notarized, and you can find that online. I could get that that website to you guys too if you want to reach out, but it's pretty user friendly, simple to understand. But we want to get that notarized, because what we're going to do is we're going to turn around and we're going to take that police report and that affidavit, and we're going to send copies to each of the credit reporting agencies, right? On our credit report, we want to send a copy of those particular pages with that particular creditor, that particular item that we know is identity theft. That's going to be very important. And there's a couple, I talk about this more in the book, the types of affidavits. There's one for active duty military. There's the initial report, and then there's that escalated one as well. Now, we've gotten to the place where we want to talk about questions and what anybody has that they want to know about. I thank you guys for being patient with me this evening. So who has some questions?
Okay, awesome. Francesca, if you don't mind, just unsharing your screen.
Okay.
And then
All right.
I'll turn it over to Felicia to see if she see any Q&A on our Zoom, and then let me check the YouTube channel.
I don't see anything on my end, but I do have a question.
Okay.
How does it benefit you? Because I paid some cards ahead of time, and when I look at the credit score, it's like it barely moves. So is that a good thing? Like, say you owe $1,500 and you say, okay, I'm going to pay $700, or does that really impact your credit score by paying more than enough and paying before time, or is it just best to make monthly payments and just pay a little bit over for each month instead of just paying one lump sum?
So, Felicia, I think it would be good if you are close to that, depending on what that limit is. Mm-hmm. Remember, our first goal is to get to that 30%. Once we get to that 30%, if we can start moving to that 7 to 11%, that's when you're going to see more traction. when we're talking about, is that we would have to really look at, is that the thing that's really holding on that credit score, and what else in that pie chart is being a factor, you know, and how that score is calculating. So it could be it's new, you have great payment history, but you have very new credit. You may have great revolving credit, but you don't have any installment credit reporting. Sometimes it has something to do with it. Now, as far as paying early or paying over, I have seen that be beneficial to the creditor and you, because what happens is they're going to look at you and say, hey, this risk-based lending, let's give her some more money. And that could be good, because if you have issues with keeping that utilization in that 30% space, you know, then if they give you a higher limit on this card, that may help to retract some of that overall and what that debt ratio looks like. If that does that kind of answer what your question?
It does. And one card they did increase the limit, but of course I was looking for a different credit score, so I was trying to. I was like, "What is going on? Y'all got to do something." But anyway, I hear you.
Okay, and you know something else I tell people, every 6 months, if you're paying good and you're paying over, I know it's been different because of COVID now, I would ask them for that increase every 6 months, because you deserve it. If you're paying it like that, yeah, you deserve to get that increase. So definitely.
Okay, Francesca, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any questions on YouTube, but that's one of the things that I think makes it this session an advantage, because once it's on YouTube, it's out there forever. So, Francesca, why don't you, if we have anyone that is interested in getting credit restoration services from your organization, can you tell them the steps to for making that happen?
Yes. So if you're interested in working with Common Sense Solutions to help you on this journey with your credit, what we initially do is, whether we get an inquiry and it's over some type of social media or someone calls in, I try to make it a brief overview, not to overwhelm them, but I have a text message that I send out, and it pretty much just tells them we're excited. If they're ready to work on their credit, we would love to help them. It gives them a link to actually go to the calendar for the business. And we do what we call complimentary 15-minute credit discovery calls, is what I like to call them. And so it gives them the link to go to see the availability. It also sends them back an email letting them know, this is where I need you to go to get your credit profile, that Tri-Merge credit report, so that you can send me your login credentials. I can actually review that, and we can have a productive discovery call. Because whether someone thinks they need credit restoration, that doesn't always mean that they do. They might not have the right mix of credit. There can be a number of elements there. And so I like to take the time to look at that credit report. A lot of people don't know how to read a credit report, dissect that, tell you, what do I see based on that pie chart, where you are, what needs to be done, what the plan of action is if you do decide to move forward in a partnership on this journey with us. And if you don't, this is what I think you should do to get you on the path to that, what we call that great credit score. And it's very pleasant. So it's not being too pushy. It's not being overwhelming. I think it works well because this is a very sensitive matter and subject. When we talk about finances, we're talking about credit. And sometimes it takes building a rapport with people and just giving them the opportunity to kind of navigate that a little bit and see, they kind of get some feedback and that that link, it asks them, why are they looking to work on their credit at this time? And it gives a couple of reasons why, and then it gives them other. So are they trying to purchase a home? Do they just want better credit in general? Do they need to buy a vehicle? Did they get turned down maybe for a position they really wanted at work? You know, there's a lot of reasons why people want to work on their credit. And it really helps when you know what those pain points are, because at Common Sense, that is our goal. Our goal is to help every consumer reach or realize whatever dream that is. So I don't want to make that discovery call. If it's a discovery call that needs to be more about educating that consumer, they may not have the right mix of credit. I've seen that a lot of times, Bernice. And just by us having that discovery call, they may call me back in 2 months and their credit score is 600 or something. And they didn't need credit restoration. So it depends. Like we stated earlier, it's personal. Everybody's situation is different. So that's something that I try to do different with Common Sense Solutions, is provide a solution. You know, not just look at it as, well, how can I get them in? How can I get them to be a client? You know, I think it's more important. The education piece is very important to me. If you sign up for services with me, the first 30 days, you receive an email from me every day. And it's what I call a nurturing campaign. And all I do is educate. So it's nothing you have to do, but I talk to you and tell you things about credit that maybe you don't know, or maybe you did know, but it's also something, a way that I feel you can go out and you can share with family, with friends, with those who are most important to you, because they may not be ready to take this journey. But education is always key, right? So literacy is what we're talking about here. That's major.
Right. So if anyone is interested in the services at Common Credit, you will reach out to Francesca, and you will receive a complimentary credit report analysis. And in that analysis, she will tell you what she's saying in your credit report as it relates to those 5 portions of that pie chart that we've been trying to drill in your head over the last 2 sessions. And at that point, you are on your own. You can take that information and work on it yourself. She'll tell you what she sees, or you can work with her directly and go through her credit restoration program. Well, she will hold your hand along the process. I think the process gets very complicated when you're having to deal with getting items removed off of your credit report, and you're trying to stay on top of the credit reporting agency and the creditor to make sure that they're doing their job, as well as enforcing your consumer. So you want to be able to pick someone who knows the consumer rights and willing to hold your hand along with the process. But one thing I want to mention about Francesca Ross Jones' book is that her book gives you a step-by-step guide as well. There's many people that pick her book up and do it themselves, but there are some people that it's too time consuming and you want to hire somebody to help you with that. So she offers those services. But I also think that the education piece is so important, that credit report analysis, and the fact that she does that complimentary really speaks to her heart behind educating as it relates to financial literacy. So I don't see any more questions here, but Francesca, thank you so much again. I mean, your level of dedication from just that, sitting in your truck, girl, is very commendable. And Felicia, I all the time, but I do appreciate your partnership. And I have been chatting about this for several months, and so you've been a great sounding board, and I do appreciate you. And if anyone again wants to work with Francesca Ross Jones, if you need her information, you can find that on our blog, www.nabafinancialliteracy.com. Any of our NABA Southern Region social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You'll have that there as well. And her presentation, if you would like to email her, that presentation would be available as well. So do you have any final words for us, Francesca, before we log off?
Well, Naba, thank you for this opportunity. It has been a blessing just to be able to share with consumers to give them a path. A lot of people had no clue about credit scores. Mm-hmm. What makes up the credit score? Why does it look like this? Mm-hmm. Any of that before this October financial literacy sessions brought by you guys, and what you're doing is absolutely amazing. I have just been honored to be able to educate, empower, elevate, embrace every single person who has been able to join us on a session, who will see or review this session later. And I just look forward to what else you guys will have coming forth in the future that really speaks to the heart of the consumer, as well as the educators, the people who are the forerunners in these industries, who understand how this works, who don't mind sharing and educating, because education is so powerful. Knowledge is so powerful. Now you guys have used your platform to help people go forward. And even though 2020 has been very challenging for each of us in individual ways, people are empowered this evening to move forward. I'm telling you, to move forward and just move on into 2021, making some amazing common sense decisions about what's going on in their financial life. And I'm excited about that. So again, thank you guys. And please just continue to bless consumers like you are, because this has been absolutely amazing.
Well, awesome. Well, I think we all three just appreciate each other when it comes to financial literacy and educating our community. So, Francesca, we will be using you again. I'm sure we'll have some sessions in the future where we'll be addressing this topic at some point or another. So stay tuned. And with that, guys, I say it's a wrap. Thanks again. Have a great week.
Take care.
Take